basically, first I'll explain what a quadtree basically is, like just general introduction and how it is used, or what are the various functions that we write in it. Then we've written a JavaScript code which is actually working, so we'll show a demo for that. Then we'll discuss some optimizations in quadtrees, like compressed quadtrees and dynamic quadtrees, and how they tend to solve the problems that arise in the original quadtree. So I'll begin by starting with what is a quadtree. So basically, a quadtree is a data structure that is used to represent two-dimensional spatial information. So any information that can be stored in the form of a graph on the 2D plane, that can also be represented by a quadtree. So a better way to understand quadtree is through the example of a segment tree, which we already know. So in a segment tree, every node represents a segment of an array or a line or whatever. So every node contains information pertaining to a segment. So similarly, in a quadtree, every node contains information pertaining to a specific area or a region of the space. So, like in a segment tree, the first node contains the information for the entire segment. So, similarly, in a quadtree, the root node represents the entire region, that is the entire 2D plane, or we can simplify it to think of it as a unit square. So, the root node represents the entire unit square. Now, every node, that is every internal node in quadtree, is split into exactly four children. This represents the space that we're currently considering being divided into four quadrants along the x and y axis. So as a segment tree is divided into half and half. So we have a diagram on the next slide to help understand. So you can see that the second and fourth quadrants have a scattering of points, and every square that is present in this diagram represents a node of the quadrant. Now, a particular feature of this quadtree of the quadtree data structure is that the branching in all cases is not uniform. So you can see that in the first quadrant, there are no internal squares or internal nodes present. This is because there are no points there, and since if we try to branch it uniformly, we will be storing a lot of redundant information. So what makes this quadtree very useful is that we stop branching whenever we run out of interesting information in the array. On the other hand, in the second and fourth quadrant, in the previous figure, there were a lot of points. So we we uh, we branch them further. So we go into a higher depth. So you can see that some squares are smaller than the other squares. So each square or each node has a particular level. So the outermost square that we can see is the root, and that is at the level 0. Then the children of the root, which are the four quadrants, they are all at level 1. The children of the root are at level 2, and so on. So this is one way of thinking of a quad. Now, quadtrees can be of two types majorly. One is a point quadtree, which we showed in the earlier figure, which is built over data comprising of several data points scattered in a 2D region. So the interesting property, the interesting property in the case of a point quadtree is the presence of points in the region. So we generally stop splitting the region of the quadtree when there is only one point, or when there are a fixed number of points after which we do not want to split any further. So most quadtrees that we will consider later will have the interesting property that we go on splitting the area until there is exactly one point in that given area. Uh, Another type of a quadtree, like this was a point quadtree. So another type that we can discuss is a region quadtree. So what a region quadtree consists of is, instead of having points, it is talking about the properties of the entire region. So in that case, the splitting criteria is different. In that case, we stop splitting whenever the property that we are looking for is uniform over the entire region. So that will come later. There is an example. If you can go ahead. If you can go ahead, Aditya.
Where
Yeah,
diagram.
yeah, yeah. So this is an example of the actual tree, like how the tree structure of it can be visualized. So the on the left, I've drawn a graph. I've drawn a 2D plane and I've drawn some points inside. And on the right, it represents how it would look in a tree form. So the root represents the entire square, the entire unit square, if you think of it that way. Then the node number one represents the second quadrant, that is the top left square, which contains exactly 1 point and thus need not be split for. Then the node number two represents the top right corner or the first quadrant, which has a large number of points and the points are clustered closely together. So we go on splitting and we go on increasing the levels of our squares. That is, we go on decreasing the size of the side of the square until each square contains exactly 1 point. So we can see how it will look as a tree structure, like with pointers and everything. Yeah, next.
Grid structure.
Can you go ahead?
Yeah, I went.
Yeah, yeah. So this is region quadries, which I was discussing earlier. So what a region quadry will do is it will stop the splitting whenever the property over that region is uniform. So for example, in image compression, we stop the splitting when the color property in the region is sufficiently uniform instead of storing data for individual pixels. This is what makes the quadry an efficient way to store data. Unlike if we had stored data for each pixel, we are just storing pixel. We are storing data for a in some cases we're not going into depth and looking at individual pixels. We're looking overall. Yeah, Nick. Yeah. So this is a way of looking at quadries. So as you might have seen in a quadry structure, a grid is formed, and not just one grid. A various number of grids are formed, each with differing levels. So what does a uh, grade of level I mean? So as I discussed earlier, a node at depth I represents a square of side length 2 raised to minus I. That is it is a node obtained on splitting the unit square I times. So now every every node in such a of such a side length can together comprises of a grade of depth I. And every node in such a grid can be defined by by a unique triplet comprising of the level or the depth of the node, and x and y coordinates, which are the bottommost point of the node, bottom left point of the node, to differentiate the nodes from each other at the same. Then we come to discussing what actually the quadry might be used for. So the first use of the quadry might be, of course, to find out the number of points in a particular region or a particular square or a particular rectangle. So this is a function that will do that. So what this query function will do is it will begin with a range and an empty found array, and we are checking how many points lie in this range. So what this is doing is if the intersection of if this region, that is our current node, intersects with our given range, then we add the points which are lying inside our range to the found array, and then we are recursing into the children of this of our current node, and this process continues recursively until there are no more intersections. So this we've implemented actually, so we'll show it later. Now another function that we might need is fast point location, or locating the node at which a particular point is located. So an important feature of the quadry is that all points need not be located at the same level, because some regions of the graph are sparse while some regions are dense. So the regions which are sparse have stopped at lower levels, they have not split further, while the regions which are dense have the actual points that are present are actually found at very low levels, because we stop when there is exactly 1 point in the square. So we do not know the level at which the node is present, and thus what we do is we binary search on all possible. So before that, an important thing that must be noted is that we have maintained a hash table for each level. So for each level, we can tell which points are present at that particular level, indexed in that. So if you look at the pseudocode on the right, T is our tree, Q is the point that we're searching for, and low and high is the range of the binary search. So first we look at mid, that is we are doing the binary search, and then we use the function qt get node, which takes the inputs, the tree, the point, and the level. So what it is doing is that if the node is present at that level, then it is returning the node. Sorry, if the point is present in some node at that level, then it is returning that node. Now, if it is null, then it means that the point has been discovered previously. So we search at lower levels. Then if it is not null, then that point is present in that level. Now, this does not mean that it is discovered at that level. This can be discovered later also. So first of all, what we do, we go into the child which contains that point. And if that child is null, then we are sure that it has been discovered at that level because there are no further children which have that point. Otherwise, we search below, that is in greater depth. So we return the qt fast point location in our tq mid plus 1 to h. And this is a time complexity analysis. So we are searching at log h levels, and every search takes, that is every time the operation runs, all operations are O1. So the overall time complexity is O of log h, but h is not defined, so we may have a problem. So now we'll just show a brief demo of our code.
Okay, I am audible, right?
Yes.
Okay, so uh, yeah, so I will just show by adding a few points. So currently we just have a root node in our quadtree, and the moment we add a few points, so here the interesting property is that if the current node has more than 4 points, it will divide, and if it has less than 4 points, then it will not divide. So here there are just 4 points, so this has not divided this node. Now the moment I add more points, it is subdivided into children. Similarly, I can keep adding more and more points. So, as Atharva said, this is useful because here the grid size is small, and here we need a small grid size because there's a lot of information. While here we don't need that level of information, and we don't need grids of that level. So instead of extending this grid fully, we are maintaining where there are more points and where there are less points. So, like, I can add more points. So, like, as you can see in these regions, there's a high density and hence more depth. And like in this region, there is no information because there are no points. Uh, Now, here are just a few random distributions. And now, like, we can count in a given range. So, uh, like, this square is the given range, but we can also modify it to be a circle or rectangle, whatever. And as shown in the algorithm, like, this is how it works. There's an intersects function, and it recursively goes into the nodes. So yeah, that's all for the demo. Okay, there is even the source code if anyone wants to see. Yeah, I'll just show the source code of the quadtree. So yeah, so it basically has the boundaries. So from which top left point to which bottom right point, and it has the capacity. So as I said, it stores 4 points and then it breaks into children. So here n is the capacity. This dot point stores the points in it, and this dot divided is initially false. And the moment it becomes true, the moment there are more than capacity points, this becomes true, and we recursively subdivide into 4 children, and we call them northeast, northwest, southeast, and southwest. So now we'll continue to compress quadtrees. So what is the need for compressed quadtrees? So a quadtree may have lots of useless nodes. And let us consider a simple case where there are only 2 points very close to each other, and there are no other points. So in the whole space, there are only 2 points which are very close to each other. Now, I'll just show that image. So this is the image. So as you can see, this node, and this node is useless. Similarly, once we know that it is in this quadrant, we only need this child, and these three are useless. Once I know that it's in this square, these three are useless. So as you can see, there are a lot of unnecessary intermediate nodes. Like this, all are intermediate nodes which are not on the path to our 2 points. Uh, and as I said, the quadtree node keeps splitting, but only one of the 4 split children is useful. What this does is that it causes long chains, which increase both the number of nodes as well as the height. So you can see this tree, which is for the following space. You have a root. You have three useless children. Then we have one useful child, who again has three useless children and one useful child. Now, what we do in compressed quadtree is that this whole chain is reduced to a single compressed node. So we'll have a root and then the child. We won't have any intermediate nodes, and we won't have these useless null pointers. So now let us consider a compressed quadtree and look at its properties. So first of all, it has a linear number of points. This clearly follows, as there are n minus 1 internal nodes with degree greater than 1, as we have removed all the intermediate nodes. Secondly, there are no bounds on the height of the quadtree. The height can still be On in the worst case. So we can make a space such that even after removal of the worst, like the useless points, there are still On height in the tree. And lastly, since we have removed these intermediate nodes, so since we have removed these nodes, we no longer have that depth relation, that this depth is 0, this is 1, this is 2. In a compressed quadtree, this will be 0, this will directly be 1. So what problem is there? No longer the binary search technique which we discussed in the previous algorithm, it doesn't work. So we need a new algorithm. But before we make the algorithm, we'll construct the compressed quadtree. So we need a O and log n time. So this means that we have to make a recursive solution. Consider that the plane has n points, and from yesterday's PPT by Pranav and others, it is possible to find a disk with radius r containing at least n by 10 points. Now this r, it will be found by an approximation algorithm, so it will be less than equal to 2 times r optimal, where r optimal is the smallest possible disk containing at least n by 10 points. Now let us construct a grid of this level log r. So this grid GL, where L is this, right? Now imagine the disk and the grid overlaid on top of it. So now it is a bit mathematical, so I'll go over quickly. You can read it. In this grid and inside the disk, there will be at most 25 squares, 5 into 5. And total the disk has n by 10 points. So by pigeonhole principle, each small cell in the disk has at least n by 250 points. And by one more lemma of the previous PPT, it has at most n by 2 points. So basically what we have done is we have identified a square which contains at least n by 2 and at most n by 2. So we have reduced the square to having n by k points, right? If it's between this, so it can be written as n by k. Now, suppose we can build the tree for points inside the square. Call this T in, and for rest of the squares, we build T out. And like assume we can build both squares. Now we have to merge this solution. So how we'll merge it? We'll find where T in has to be hung in T out, and this can be done by a point location query, which will run in on time. So merging happens in on, and building T in takes order of n by k size, n by k time, as the size of S in is n by k, and building T out will be n minus n by k. So by simple Master's theorem, we get O like Tn equal to Tn by k plus Tn minus n by k plus order n. So this whole construction is done in O n log n. This is one example. Like this is Tn, and we'll build one for T out, and we'll merge. Now point location in compressed quadtree. So to find the point, we can simply traverse the tree, but this might take O and time, since our algorithm of traversal is based on the height of the tree. And as discussed earlier, there is no restriction on height. Similarly, we cannot use binary search, as we said earlier. So we need one more additional tree called T dash, which is called the finger tree. So why it is called finger tree? Because it has fingers which point into, which have cross pointers into T. And while the construction of T dash will show that it is balanced. So how do we construct T dash? So each tree has a centroid. So like this is well known that a centroid is a point such that on removing it, all the rest of the components, which are also trees, will have size less than or equal to 4. Okay. So let us start this. So for T, find the median and keep it as the root of T dash. So let it be R0. And this R0 will also contain a pointer to that node, which was the centroid. Now, once we delete, suppose we delete this centroid, so there will be new small trees created. Now we must follow this procedure recursively, and for each root of the smaller tree, it should be connected to R0. Now, this tree is balanced. How it is balanced? The depth for n points is less than or equal to 1 plus the depth of n by 2 points. And in this, using uh, this, now we can show that the height for n points will be order of log n. So just a quick example. This is the graph. Phi is the centroid, so we take it as the root. So phi is the root. Now we get three smaller trees. This 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 6 and 8, 9 centroid is 6. So we connected 6 to R0. We connect for 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 is the centroid. We connected it to 5. And 10 we connected to 5. Now we recursively do this for F2, F6, and F10. Now you can see this blue line. So that is the cross pointer. Similarly, we have lots of cross pointers, which will help us in traversal. So searching in the finger tree. So for any query point Q, begin traversing in T dash. If Q lies in the region represented by the current node, then we continue into the child that contains Q. Else, else what happens that the root does not contain Q, and the part which contains Q is outside the connected component hung on Q, hung on the node. So just take this example. Suppose the point is at 8. So we start at 5. The point is not in 5. So it is in one of these three connected components. So we know that it's in this connected component. So we'll go in F6. Then we'll repeat this recursively. Now this will take order h time in the finger tree. But h of the finger tree is log n. So searching takes place in order log n. So that was compressed quadries. Now Atharva will quickly do dynamic quadries.
Yeah. So the problem with this compressed query was that even though we can answer it in answer the queries in O log n, it cannot handle updates and insertions effectively. So what will happen is that if we insert it, we'll have to construct the entire finger tree. So as a solution for that, we need a dynamic query, and a dynamic query uses randomization based solutions to carry out searches in O log n time. Next. So this is so for that we first need a sampling sequence of points. This was discussed by Pranav and others yesterday. So what we do is first of all we select S1. These are sets of points, and we select S1 equal to P, which is the entire set of points that we're considering. And then each subsequent SI is formed by picking each point of the previous set by probability half. And we stop selection when the number of points goes below a pre-specified K. So the last set, that is SM, will have elements lesser than equal to K. And then we build quadries on each of these sets of points. So T1, T2, T3, T4. Now, each square in a quadtree Ti is connected to its corresponding square in Ti minus 1. Because since Ti will have greater depth, will have a lesser depth than Ti minus 1 and greater depth than Ti plus 1. So it is connected to both the squares before it and after it. Now, since we are going on taking the subsets as we increase the number, it is we can see that any square which is interesting in Ti is also interesting in its previous one, that is Ti minus 1. Since Ti minus 1 has greater depth and greater detail, since it has more number of points, and this property will help in solving our operations in O log n. So if you can go ahead. Yeah. So this is an example. Let us imagine that Q0 is the tree built on the entire point set. Then Q1 is built on a subset of the points in Q0, and Q2 is built on a further subset. So as you can see, only some squares which are present in Q2 are linking in Q1. That is, but all squares present in Q2, that is, all important squares in Q2 are also important squares in Q1. This is not necessarily true the other way around, because some important squares in Q1, that is you can see that the level of detail goes on increasing towards the left because there are more number of points. So this will help in answering our queries in login, because if you can go ahead. Yeah, because if we see how the search actually takes place, so what we want to do is we want to find the smallest square in T1 which covers the location of our given point. So we start from the smallest tree, that is the tree with the least detail, that is TM. And what we do is we first search in TM for the minimum interesting square, which can contain that point. Now this tree has a much lesser number of nodes, so this search takes place very quickly. Now, once we are done with this search, we go into TM minus one and we start search from the interesting node that we got from TM. We do not start it again from the root. So it takes a lesser number of searches than it would have if we had started all over again. Similarly, we pass on to TM minus two, TM minus three up to T1. So in this way, we instead of searching in large trees, we have searched in smaller trees and navigated by pointers. So if we analyze the proof, we can see that it is indeed O of login. Next slide. Yeah, because we can prove that the number of searching steps in each tree is constant. And the number of trees, that is the number of levels in this dynamic quad tree, is login. Because how are we building these trees? We are taking the, for each point we are taking it in the next tree with probability half. So after login trees are over, the probability is that the trees will be that is no more new trees will be formed. So the total number of trees should be of the order login. Thus, overall order of searching and insertion is log. Yeah, this concludes our presentation.
Yeah, that is all. If anyone has any questions, we can try to take them. 1-2 minutes, maybe we have. And you can try out the website, like play around. Okay. Yeah, that was all. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Yeah, next presentation.
Yeah.
Is the slide visible? My screen?
Yes.
Yes, visible, yes.
So, good morning. We will be giving a presentation now on even more about dynamic quad trees, balanced quad trees, and good triangulation. I am Akshat.
And I'm Mishajay, and let's begin. Dynamic quad trees. We'll look at how compressed quad trees can be stored using any data structure for ordered sets. The key idea used here is that we define an ordering on the nodes of the compressed quad tree and then store the nodes in the ordered set in that order. We'll look at how we can perform insertion and deletion in a compressed quad tree, which allows us to have a dynamic implementation for compressed quad trees. Next slide.
Yeah, so DFS traversal of a dynamic quad tree. We start with the root node, and after visiting it, then we visit its bottom left square subtree, then its bottom right square subtree, then top left, and then top right square subtree. Consider the figure on the side. Here we have a node, and the node has 4 children, each containing a point, and we traverse from the bottom left to the top right. So, okay, so now we will see in the next slide how an actual DFS traversal happens in a tree with a small depth. So a DFS traversal of a quad tree of height 2 with each leaf having a point from the point set. Here in the left figure, we can see the complete DFS traversal. We start with the root node, which is of size 1 cross 1, basically node 0. And then we go to node 1, which is the bottom left square of size 0.5 cross 0.5. And from there, we go to its bottom leftmost child, which is 0.25 cross 0.25, basically the node 2. And then come back to node 1 and then go to node 3 and so on. Hence, we visit the bottom left child subtree of node 0 completely, and then we go to bottom right child subtree and visit the children similarly and so on. So we can see from here node 0, we go to node 1. Node 1 is this 0.5 cross 0.5 left bottom left square tree, and then there we go to its bottom left square subtree, which is this, and then from there we go to this, then top left, then top right, and similarly we visit the bottom right child subtree completely. Hello.
Q order. We consider any two canonical squares, square and square prime, contained in the quad tree. If square is visited before square prime, we denote this by square is less than square prime. The previous DFS visits the cells in these order. This order. This ordering can also be extended to include points as well. This can be done in the following manner. If P belongs to square, then we say that square is less than P. Otherwise, if square 1 belongs to Gi and square 2 belongs to Gi is the cell that contains the point P, then we say that square 1 is less than P if and only if square 1 is less than square 2. If P and Q are 2 points and Gi is the grid that is fine enough such that P and Q lie in different cells, say square P and square Q respectively, then P is said to be less than Q if and only if square P is less than square Q. Next, Z order. When the Q order is restricted to contain only points, we get the Z order. More specifically, it is a bijection Z from the unit interval to the unit square, such that ordering along the resulting curve is the Z order. The Z order mapping for a real number alpha with the following binary expansion is given by the point whose x coordinate and y coordinate can be represented as the following. On the right hand side, we have a figure containing 4 points. So here we can index the x and y axis using 0.0 and 0.1, and in the given fashion we can interleave the decimal values to get the value of alpha, and the points will be visited in the increasing order of alpha, which is 0.00, 0.01, 0.10 and 0.11 in this order. Next slide.
So yeah, lowest common ancestor of 2 points and squares in the quad tree. We have 2 points P and Q both belonging to the point set capital P. The LCA of P and Q is the smallest canonical square that contains both P and Q. The green square in the figure below represents the LCA of P and Q, the 2 red points. So these two, the LCA of these 2 red points is basically this green square. For 2 cells in the quad tree, their LCA is just the LCA of their centers. So we can also have a lowest common ancestor defined for squares. For example, the LCA of the green square, this green square, and the top left square of size 0.5 cross 0.5 is the whole root square of size 1 cross 1. Okay, so now we see what is bit delta A comma B. Suppose we have 2 real numbers A and B, where both A and B belongs to 0 to 1. A and B both are written in base 2. Bit delta A comma B. Meshare, can you mute yourself? So bit delta A comma B is the first index after the decimal in which A and B differ. We are considering here the 1 based indexing. Example, consider 2 numbers 1 by 4 and 3 by 4. So if we write 1 by 4 in base 2, then A comes out to be 0.01 and similarly B comes out to be 0.11. So here A and B differ in the first index itself. So bit delta AB is 1. In a real world computer, bit delta A and B, bit delta for A comma B can be computed in order 1 time. Bit delta is used to know the location of LCA of 2 points. We will see this in the next slide. So the formal location of the LCA of P and Q. We first calculate the level L of the LCA P comma Q. So L will be equals to minimum of bit delta XP, XQ, comma bit delta of YP by Q and whole minus 1. So let us understand the significance of bit delta XP XQ so that we can understand how the above equation is true. So if bit delta XP XQ is alpha, then this means that we have to divide the root square alpha times vertically in order to separate P and Q in 2 different adjacent vertical slabs. Here in the top right figure, we can see that we are required to divide the root square once in order to separate P and Q. So the bit delta is 1 for their x coordinates. That is, in the first level of the tree itself, they were separated. And in the bottom figure, we can see that even after dividing the root square, P and Q were still not separated. And hence, one more partition was required. So here their bit delta for their x coordinates will be 2. Similarly, we define bit delta for y coordinates, but now with horizontal partitions instead of vertical partitions. Now LCA will be 1 level above for both horizontal and vertical partitions so that P and Q are together and will definitely be the minimum of the 2. Now we come to the third point. So the side length S of the canonical square which contains P and Q will be 2 raised to minus L as discussed previously by Aditya and Athar. Suppose X is XP and Y is YP, then the coordinate for the bottom left vertex of the LCA square LCA is basically the square, will be x prime is equals to s times the floor of x by s, and y prime will be s times into floor of y by s. S is the side length of the square. So the LCA P and Q can be written as the Cartesian product of these two segments. The first segment goes from x prime till x prime plus s, and the second segment goes from y prime to y prime plus s. And the square defined by this is basically the square LCA. So we know what is LCA, but why do we require LCA? So given two cells, square and square prime, we want to determine the Q order between them. So if square is a complete subset of square prime, then we know that square will be visited before square prime in the Q ordering. Then definitely square prime is less than square. If square prime is a subset of square, then similarly square is less than square prime, because square will be visited before square prime. But what if the case if neither of them is a subset of each other? Then let the square double prime be the LCA of square and square prime. Then it is clear that square and square prime must lie in two different subtrees of square double prime, which is the LCA. And we know the ordering of the subtrees of the children of a given node. Hence, we can calculate the ordering between square and square prime. Hence, we can compute the Q order in constant time using LCA, and we can compute the bit delta A comma B in constant time. Hence, we can compute the LCA of 2 points in constant time. So we can also compute the Q order in big O of 1 time, that is constant time.
Performing point location in a quadtree. Given a list of cells of T stored in the ordered set according to the Q order and a query point Q, and we want to find the smallest square in which it lies. To answer this query, we find two consecutive cells such that the following relation holds: square is less than Q is less than square prime. This implies that square is the quadtree leaf that contains the point Q. Indeed, if square Q is the leaf containing point Q, we have square Q less than Q. And the only bad scenario would be when square Q is less than square is less than Q. But by definition of Q order, this would imply that square is contained within square Q, which is a contradiction to our assumption that square Q is the leaf, and this is not possible. Next slide. Overlaying two quadtrees. Given two quadtrees T prime and T double prime, we can overlay them and compute the combined quadtree. This is the minimal quadtree such that each cell from T prime or T double prime appears in it. We can observe that given T prime and T double prime a sorted list of the nodes sorted according to the Q order, we can compute the merged quadtree in linear time by merging the sorted list and taking care of any duplicates. Next slide.
So now we see point location in a compressed quadtree using Q ordering. Given a list of cells of T is the quadtree, stored in the ordered set according to Q order, and a query point Q in the region 0 to 1 square, we want to find the smallest square in the compressed quadtree in which it lies. We first find the last square, square V, whose Q order is just less than Q using binary search. If Q belongs to square V, then we are done, because V is the node required node which contains Q and is the smallest. So, but what if Q does not belongs to square V? In the figure we can see here Q does not belong to the small square, square V. So in that case, suppose W is the required node, then Q definitely belongs to the RGW. RGW is the region for which W is responsible. So let square be the LCA of square V and Q. Then if square is a part of the compressed quadtree, then we are done. Else, if it is not a part of a quadtree, then we will compute the predecessor of square in the compressed quadtree, which will be the final smallest node in the compressed quadtree, which contains Q. We will see a pseudocode for this algorithm. So point location algo is the name of the function. It takes two parameters, the quadtree T and the query point Q. We first calculate the predecessor of Q in the Q ordered set of T. So this can be done in log n time using binary search. So we get V. If Q completely lies in square V, then we simply return V. If it does not, then that means V is not Q is not the part of V. So we compute the LCA of V and Q. So let square LCA be the LCA of square V and Q. If square LCA lies in the ordered set of compressed quadtree, that implies it is a part of the compressed quadtree. So we return LCA. But what if the case if LCA is not a part of the compressed quadtree? Then we cannot return LCA. Then in that case, we compute the predecessor of the LCA. We get square W and then we return W. The total time complexity given pre-processing, if we do the pre-processing completely, the time complexity would be order and would be order log n, because predecessor can be computed in log n time using binary search, and to just check if it is lies inside or not, it can be done in constant time, and to check if LCA is the part of compressed quadtree can be done in log n time again. So the overall complexity for searching in compressed quadtree becomes comes out to be big O log n given pre-processing is done.
Insertion and deletion of a point from a compressed quadtree, given T, which is a compressed dynamic quadtree, and Q, which is the point that is to be inserted. First, we find W, the node in the tree that contains Q, using point location in a compressed quadtree. The first case would be that W is an empty leaf, in which case we simply store Q in W. The second case would be when W is a non-empty leaf and some point P is contained inside square of W. Then we find square, which is the LCA of P and Q, and insert square into the tree under W and create its children, which contain P and Q respectively. The third case would be when W is a compressed node and Z is its child. We find the LCA of square Z and Q and denote it by square, and insert square into the tree under W and create its children, and insert Z and Q to the appropriate leaves. Next slide. In all three cases, the insertion requires a constant number of search and insert operations on the ordered set data structure. Deletion can also be done in similar fashion. We delete the point from the node that contains it and then remove all the nodes which are no longer necessary for the quadtree. The overall running time for insertion and deletion is given by O of Qn, where Qn is the time required to perform a search query in the ordered set data structure. Next. Balanced quadtrees and good triangulations. The aspect ratio of a convex body is defined as the ratio of its longest dimension to its shortest dimension. For a triangle, delta is equal to ABC. A ratio delta is the length of the longest side divided by the height of the triangle on the longest edge. We can further show that 1 by sine phi is less than equals to A ratio delta is less than equals to 2 by sine phi, where phi is the smallest angle of the triangle. From the figure, we can see that h is equal to b sine phi and A ratio delta is equal to c by h. We can compare it with b by h to get the first inequality, and for the second inequality, we can use the triangle inequality a plus b greater than equals to c, and the fact that the side length c is greater than equals to b is greater than equals to a, and manipulating these equations, we get the second inequality as well. Next slide. Another measure for sharpness is the edge ratio, E ratio delta, which is the ratio between triangle's longest and shortest edge. A triangulation of a domain D, which is a subset of R square, is a partition of the domain into a set of interior disjoint triangles M. The size of the triangulation M is denoted by mod of M, which is precisely the number of triangles that are contained in it. For a triangulation M, A ratio M gives the maximum aspect ratio among all triangles that are present in M. Next slide. Corner. A corner of a quadtree cell is one of the four vertices of its square. Splitting. We say that side of a cell is split if either of the neighboring boxes sharing it are split. Balanced quadtree. A quadtree is said to be balanced if any side of an unsplit cell contains at most one quadtree corner in its interior. That is, adjacent leaves either belong to the same or the adjacent levels. Thus, if any neighbor leaf is too large, and the difference of height is greater than equals to 2 compared to the current leaf, then we subdivide the larger neighbor until the tree becomes balanced, and we follow this procedure for all leaves. This allows us to obtain a balanced quadtree in O of n log n plus m time, where n is the number of points in the point set and m is the output size of the quadtree. Next slide. Extended cluster. The 5 cross 5 neighborhood of V consisting of same size cells centered at V is called the extended cluster. Well-balanced quadtree. The quadtree is well balanced if it is balanced and for every leaf which contains a point of the point set. Its extended cluster is also in the quadtree, and the extended cluster contains no other points of the point set. We'll be using all these definitions in proofs which are given further. Next slide.
So we now know what is a well-balanced quadtree, but how to build a well-balanced quadtree? So we see this. For every leaf node V of T, which contains a point of P, we check if its extended cluster contains any other point of P, and if so, we split it. Furthermore, for each child U of V, we insert all the nodes in the extended cluster of U into the quad tree if they do not already exist over there. We repeat this process recursively till all non-empty leaves have the required separation property, and of course during all of this process we maintain the balance property of the quad tree by adding the required necessary nodes wherever we want. The resulting quad tree is well balanced as required. Furthermore, the work can be charged to newly created nodes, and as such takes linear time in the output size once the balanced compressed quad tree is computed. The time complexity here is big O of n log n plus m, where n is the number of points and m is the output size of the well balanced quad tree. To compute the balance tree, it takes n log n plus m time. So, and then to do the rest of the computation for extended cluster, it takes another linear time in the output size, that is m. So again, the complexity comes out to be big O of n log n plus m. So now we see what's warping. So we warp the quad tree framework as follows. For a point P belonging to the point set capital P, let C of P be the nearest corner to P inside the leaf in T where P lies. Here in the first image, we can see that P lies in the square top left square leaf. Then C of P will be the nearest corner. Then this is the nearest corner, C of P blue dot to P. We replace C of P by P. Thus, a 2 cross 2 group of square leaves turns into a square divided into 4 fat quadrangles when we change the edges connecting with C of P to connect with P rather. Here we see the neighbor leaves are connected to C of P via edges. Now we have to change C of P to P. So now they connect to P rather than C of P, and the 4 squares get converted to 4 fat quadrangles. Now we see what's triangulation. We triangulate the resulting planar subdivision. Regular squares can be triangulated by just introducing the diagonal, creating two isosceles right triangles. Here in this right image, below image, we can see that we have a square leaf without any point. So there is no point. So we just connect the diagonal to form two isosceles right triangles, and we triangulate the square. If a cell contains a point P, we first warp it into quadrangles and we triangulate them by choosing the diagonal that gives better aspect ratio. That is, we choose the diagonal such that the maximum aspect ratio of the resulting two triangles is minimized. In the previous image, that is this image, what we see that for any quadrangle, we have two diagonals. If we choose the other one, which is not the blue dotted line, then it results in thin triangles, and which results in high aspect ratio. Thin triangles have a high aspect ratio because the height gets minimized and the longest edge gets maximized. So as we want to minimize the aspect ratio, we choose the other diagonal, which is the blue dotted line. So so as to get fat triangles so that the aspect ratio gets minimized. And the triangulation formed by this partitioning, this warping, is known as QT of P, which we will see later.
So we look at the following lemma. The method for building a well-balanced quad tree gives a triangulation QT of P with aspect ratio as less than equals to 4. The right triangles which were used for unwarped cells always had aspect ratio 2. If an original cell with side length L is warped, we have two cases. The first case is when the input point P lies inside the square of the original cell. To get a bound on the aspect ratio, we assume that the diagonal touching the warped point is chosen. This is done in order to minimize the aspect ratio. We consider one of the two triangles, say the triangle PQS. The maximum length diagonal is formed when the warp point P is at the original location C of P and has length x is equal to root 2L. The minimum possible area for delta is when the point lies at the center of the square and has area alpha is equal to L square upon 4. So in the below calculations, we obtain the minimum possible height by dividing the minimum possible area by the maximum possible length of the edge, and we obtain the expression for the minimum possible height. And similarly, we calculate the maximum possible aspect ratio, and this comes out to be 4. Hence, our lemma is true. The second case is when the input point lies outside the original square. Since the quad tree is well balanced, the new point P must be somewhere inside a square of length L centered at C of P. In this case, we assume that the diagonal not touching the warp point is chosen. This divides that cell into an isosceles triangle VWZ and another triangle ZWP. The first case is when ZW is longest in ZWP, then we can argue as previous, and the aspect ratio gets bounded by 4. The second case is when PW is longest in ZWP. So we compute the max possible length of PW, which is denoted by beta, and then we compute the minimum possible H prime for it, and conclude that the aspect ratio must always be lesser than beta by H. So using the diagram given, we find the coordinates of P, and then we perform all the calculations for area and get the value for H prime and beta, and we find the value of beta by H prime, which comes out to be 2.717, which is less than equals to 4. Thus our lemma is proved. Next slide.
Lemma, there is a constant C prime which is independent of P such that size of the triangulation QTP is bounded by C prime summation over all triangles in Delaunay's triangulation log of E ratio of every triangle. The proof of the lemma is a bit lengthy but simple and involves few definitions like crowded cells, etc. We will not be providing the proof, but we will see an important theorem and its proof which uses this lemma as a subpart. So the important theorem is stated as, given any point set P, we can find a triangulation QTP such that each point of P is a vertex of QT of P and aspect ratio of QTP is bounded by 4, and there exists a constant C double prime independent of P such that if M is any arbitrary triangulation containing the points of P as vertices, then the following equation, that is modulus QTP, is bounded by C double prime modulus M log aspect ratio M is true. So the proof goes as follows. Let Y, capital Y, be the set of vertices of M. Now we know that there exists a constant such that modulus QTY is bounded by this expression. This inequality comes straight from the previous lemma. Now Delaunay's triangulation has a famous property that it maximizes the minimum angle in the complete triangulation. So if capital Y is assumed to be equals to be P, then we have, as proved by Mechaire in the previous slides, that aspect ratio of a triangle is bounded by 2 by sine phi, where phi is the smallest angle, and aspect ratio of Delaunay's triangulation is the largest ratio in Delaunay's triangulation. So aspect ratio of Delaunay's triangulation is less than equals to 2 by sine phi, which implies that aspect ratio of Delaunay's triangulation of P, the whole divided by 2, is bounded by 1 by sine phi, where phi is the minimum angle in the complete Delaunay's triangulation. So as phi is maximum angle among all possible triangulation, 1 by sine phi will always be less than equals to 1 by sine phi prime, where phi prime is the minimum angle in any arbitrary triangulation M. So this inequality is also discussed by Mechaire in the previous slide. So we get aspect ratio of any arbitrary triangulation M greater than equals to aspect ratio of Delaunay's triangulation by 2, and we know that aspect ratio of any triangle is greater than the edge ratio of the triangle. So we conclude that these two inequalities hold, that is aspect ratio of M is greater than equals to aspect ratio of Delaunay's triangulation by 2 and is greater than equals to edge ratio of Delaunay's triangulation by 2. So now we see these inequalities tabbed in latex. We prove these series of inequalities one by one to reach the final bound of QTP. First inequality holds by the previous lemma, so there is no need to prove that. Second inequality holds because edge ratio of any triangle will always be less than equals to edge ratio of the Delaunay's triangulation of P, as edge ratio DTP is the maximum edge ratio among all triangles in the Delaunay's triangulation. The third inequality holds because for any triangulation M, we have that number of triangles in M is equals to number of triangles in Delaunay's triangulation. That is the same thing. So M here is any arbitrary triangulation. The fourth inequality holds because we just proved in the previous slide that edge ratio of Delaunay's triangulation is bounded by 2 times aspect ratio of arbitrary triangulation M. So we proved the theorem when point set is equals to Y. But what if it's not the case? That P can but we know that one thing, that P can never be a superset of capital Y. So let us assume the only remaining case that P is a subset of Y. Then we can observe that modulus QTP will always be bounded by QTY, because Y is the superset. And as proved above, that number of triangles in QTY, that is modulus QTY, is bounded by C prime modulus M, log aspect ratio of M. Hence, the following lemma, the following theorem holds for P when P is even a subset of Y. The corollary follows. The corollary states that number of triangles in the triangulation QTP is big O of n log n log aspect ratio of Delaunay's triangulation, where n is the number of points. See, we showed that modulus QTP is bounded by the RHS in the theorem. If we had n points, the number of triangles in any triangulation will be big O of n. So modulus QTP gets bounded by Cn log aspect ratio of Delaunay's triangulation. Hence, QTP is of the order big O of n log aspect ratio of Delaunay's triangulation. So here we conclude the corollary as well, and that's it. Thank you. If anyone has any question, we can take it up right now.
Yeah, any questions? See, I'm not expecting that everything is understood by all of you actually. At least everyone should get a definition of various things, whatever it discussed, what is a quadtree, what is a Delaunay triangulation, and what are the properties of Delaunay triangulation that are used, okay? No need to have a proof, actually, at least some information you should collect it from these presentations, okay? And you have to just go through that material, whatever is there, okay, at least at top level, may not be very detailed. Okay, so if you can go to in detail, this thing actually very good, but at least you go through it. Okay, something. Okay, any questions? Okay, then we'll meet tomorrow, 12 o'clock. Okay, with 2 more presentations.